all over the world, and we are here at the Autodrom Most for the third round of the Suzuki Swift Cup Europe. The 4.2 kilometer racetrack in the Czech Republic will in fact host races number 6 and 7 after 2 very clean races at the Red Bull Ring and 3 incredible races at Poznan in Poland. We're back in the Czech Republic for the first time this season for the first of the 2 events here in this nation. Of course, Autodrom Most and Brno being the 2 tracks that will be hosting this incredible series. We are in fact finishing the first leg of the season, the first half of this 2025 championship here at Autodrom Most, and here is the starting grid with Zsombor Pinter taking pole position, the Hungarian being the quickest in qualifying by less than a tenth over Austria's Bastian Frischmann. Istvan Bernula, the championship leader, sits in 3rd place, just ahead of Benderek Major, whereas the other driver who's fighting for the championship so far, Benjamin Nagy and Esther Nemet, starting in 8th and 6th respectively. We have 13 cars ready to fight for glory here at Most, and here is the front row of the grid. Number 587 entrusted to Zsombor Pinter, and number 531 right behind it in the blue and orange colors for Bastian Frischmann. The Austrian will definitely be trying to continue his good run of form. He currently sits in 4th place in the standings with 61 points, 30 less than Bernula, who is leading after the opening 5 races of the season. Of course, the Suzuki Swift Cup Europe, a series that started all the way back in 2006, and since 2014 it's a registered FIA series. In this championship, we've seen many drivers come through the ranks. Some of the best Hungarian talents in motorsport racing too, with Norbert Mikelic racing in 2006, driver that would then become a 3-time TCR world champion, and he is currently going for a 3rd consecutive crown, the 4th of his career, after winning in 2019 and then in the last 2 years, 2023 and 2024. And of course, let's not forget about Norbert Kiss as well, the 6th-time FIA European Truck Racing Championship champion, who raced here in 2009. And then we've had former WTCR drivers such as Attila Tassi and Daniel Nagy, Tim Gabor as well, a rally champion and a former European Touring Car Championship driver. This is an incredible championship to take the first steps into touring car racing before, of course, going to new horizons and naturally more powerful cars. Here using the sweet Suzuki Swift, a very nimble car with an inline 4 turbo engine with 170 brake horsepower. We will be seeing top speeds range between 200 and 220 kilometers per hour on this very fast racetrack, especially on the main straight and the latter part of the circuit. We will be able to follow very closely the action throughout this first race of the weekend. And in fact, Suzuki Swift is opening the spectacle here in Most. It's the first race of the entire program, a program that sees so many different championships with the GT Cup Series, the TCR Eastern Europe, Formula 4 Central European Zone, and of course, let's not forget about the Clio Cup and the Twingo Cups as well, the one-make series that often draws to some incredible racing, just like the Suzuki Swift Cup Europe, which is about to get underway for its formation lap. We're going to have 25 minutes of racing here in Most. Just as a reference, the time in qualifying was a 154.681 from Zsombor Pinter. So we're going to expect around 13 to 14 laps of racing here on a racetrack that is definitely one of the most exciting to race around in Central Eastern Europe. 4.2 kilometer circuit, which broke ground in 1983 after 5 years of work. Though, of course, the Most district has always been kind to races and racing on both cars and bikes since the end of World War II. Well, we have started now the formation lap for race 1 of the Suzuki Swift Cup Europe, and we can see different drivers starting to get grips with the car, as we see Bastian Frischmann having a bit of trouble getting up to speed and through the gears, though the cars are now officially on the way, and we can see for the first time the images of the track, as here we are towards turn number 1, and yes, you can see that Bastian Frischmann has parked his car on the outside of the start-finish straight right after the exit of the pit lane, and we could see that he was struggling with some technical issues maybe, and his race seems to be over even before its start, which is definitely a shame, but unfortunately nothing that he could do. He is out of the car and now slowly walking towards the pit lane. He says to the crew that he is okay, so thankfully it's not an issue related to the driver itself, but unfortunately the car is stricken on the right hand side of the start-finish straight, with Bastian Frischmann of Suzuki Team Austria out of the running immediately during the formation lap, which is definitely not what he wanted. So immediately a turning point of the race, even before its beginning. Bastian Frischmann is out of contention, whereas here we are with the drivers through sector number 2 and now into sector 3 with these lovely corners. But let us see just how flowy the final part of the racetrack is. It's a very fast circuit, Autodrom Most, with 21 corners, 12 to the right, 9 to the left. As you can see now, the drivers making their way towards the final 2 bends, turns number 20 and 21, two right-hand corners of roughly 90 degrees, but with a very ample radius, as you can see. With now drivers getting ready to step on the starting grid. Yellow flags, of course, being waved because of the absence of Bastian Frischmann, who is parked right outside the track. And so spot number 2 on the grid will be left empty, and therefore Istvan Bernula, the championship leader, will start from what is de facto a second position, though he will be third as the race starts, of course, then being promoted to second, as you can see the empty spot to the side of Jean-Bart Pinter, our pole sitter, as the group now finishes its preparations before the actual start of the race. We'll see probably the green flag being waved when we are ready to get underway with race 1 of the Suzuki Swift Cup Europe. And here it is, as the lights come on and they turn off for race number 1 of the Suzuki Swift Cup Europe. It's a great start from Istvan Bernula, who's already attacking Jean-Bart Pinter towards turn number 1. He is taking all the slipstream that he can towards the opening corner of this race, looking to the outside into turn number 1. It's a hard braking zone, and Jean-Bart Pinter is in the lead as he successfully defends first position. Watch out for Benderek Mayor as well, as he tries to make a move on Istvan Bernula, as of course now all of them are trying to fight towards turns number 4 and 5, and you can see how Bernula is really close to the back of Jean-Bart Pinter. However, the Hungarian is still in the lead. Bernula is in second, and then it's Benedek Mayor in third place with a white car, as the teams now watch their drivers into the second half of the opening lap of the race. It was a great getaway from Bernula, who looked as though he could be able to overtake Pinter towards the opening corner, the very stark right-left chicane that was added back in 2005 to provide a further overtaking opportunity. You can see it right on the left-hand side of the screen, the final part of that chicane, whereas here we are into sector 2. We're already into sector 3 almost, in turns 15, 16 and 17. As you can see, Bernula now struggling a bit to keep the rhythm, as Vince Keller has now moved into third place just ahead of Benedek Mayor. As of course now the fight for the podium is as open as ever, with Frischmann's retirement prior to the start of the race. He also saw Esther Nemeth, the driver who is in second in the driving standings so far, just 13 points behind Istvan Bernula, who's currently leading with 91 points, as the drivers now start the second lap of the race. As now we see almost a move up the inside for Vince Keller, as he looked to the right hand side of Istvan Bernula's Suzuki. However, the latter was able to defend the position. The championship leader is still in second position. Here is the timer. It's a 20 minutes plus 1 lap of racing here for Suzuki Swift Cup Europe, as Jean-Bart Pinter is still in the lead with roughly a 1.1 second advantage over second place Istvan Bernula. Third place goes, as of right now, to Vince Keller, with Benedek Mayor in fourth and Esther Nemeth in fifth. The driver who's second in the championship, Nemeth of course, car number 547, just ahead of Boris Liziecki and Benjamin Nagy. As now you can see the drivers going under the Orlen Bridge. We have two of them. This one in particular is the one located in the second sector of the racetrack, which then signals the drivers that they're entering the final part of the circuit. Down towards turns number 20 and 21 now, as Pinter has built quite a nice gap over Istvan Bernula in second position, as Vince Keller holds to third. But behind him, Benedek Mayor and Esther Nemeth are very, very close in what could be a three-way fight for the last step on the podium. But let's not forget that all three of them could actually attack Bernula, as the drivers now move towards the opening corner. Once again, Vince Keller looking to the inside to try and maybe put Bernula under pressure, but you can see how tighter the latter's line was throughout turns number 1 and 2, being able to therefore get a better exit out of the corner. But look at Jean-Bart Pinter. He is checked out into the lead of the race now with a 1.7 second gap over championship leader Istvan Bernula, as Keller, Mayor and Nemeth are looking quite dangerous behind him. And once again, it's Mayor who is trying very hard to overtake Vince Keller in the white car. And behind now, Esther Nemeth. She's looking amazing in these first couple of laps, trying to push as hard as possible, sitting of course in second position in the championship, just ahead of Benedek Mayor, who's third, trying of course to gain as many points as possible throughout this first half of the season. Jean-Bart Pinter, the leader of the race, now trying to get the gap to increase over Istvan Bernula. As now you see Nemeth basically glued to the back of Benedek Mayor, who is now struggling to keep up with Vince Keller and Istvan Bernula. Could this be an opportunity for Esther? Looking to the inside towards turn number 1, maybe thinking about an outside line for the first time, though Mayor was quite quick down the straights, and so he's able to keep 4th position. You can see now how Vince Keller has adapted his driving style to Bernula's, learning how to be tighter into turn 1 with the line in order to have then a better exit off of the corner, which is of course the best way to do this section that was introduced in 2005 together, with changes to crash barriers and other little details that brought the track to what it is nowadays. It's one of the best in Central and Eastern Europe, especially for one-make series such as the Suzuki Swift Cup Europe. As now you can see Keller looking very dangerous on Bernoula, with Mayor and Nemeth right behind him as well, as Vince is starting to put the pressure on championship leader Istvan Bernoula, who is not on pace compared to Jean-Bart Pinter. The last lap 3/10 quicker for the leader of the race, 155.6 compared to 155.9 for Bernoula, though the latter had his best lap of the race on the previous occasion. Jean-Bart Pinter now working through this first half of the race like an absolute champ, as the gap is now increased to 1.9 seconds over Bernoula, as Pinter now moves even further away. 2.9 now the gap between himself and his main rival, as of course it's starting to be quite big, as there's a big tank slapper from Vince Keller, who's now under attack from Mayor, as Latin now moves to the inside trying to get the move done for third place. The two go side by side towards turns number 5, 6 and 7, who will be the bravest under braking, and it looks to be Mayor as he moves into third place. Vince is now demoted to 4th and now has to watch out from the attacks of Esther Nemeth, though he is very aggressive now on Mayor, trying to maybe find a gap through to third place again. He had a lovely acceleration off of turn number 10, the hairpin that brings drivers to sector number 2, and that is a beautiful overtake from Vince Keller, who is now into third once again. But this helps Bernoula massively, as he now avoids traffic, avoids the fighting, and goes into second on his own with a nice 1.1 second gap over his rivals. Of course, though, the last lap he lost a full second to Jean-Bart Pinter, who looks unstoppable at this moment in time. You'd think that Bernoula could have maybe an answer to his rival's pace, but unfortunately for him that does not look like it, as Pinter now is a full 3 seconds in front, and the gap is scheduled to go over 3.5 seconds as well, thanks to a record-breaking first sector. And now it's over 4 seconds, 4.1 now the gap, 155.2 for Pinter, 156.4 for Bernoula. The three drivers here caught by the cameras are lapping in the 157s because of the fighting that has gone on throughout this race so far. As Bernoula now has a big gap over Vince Keller, who's once again under attack from Benderek Major, with Esther Nemeth following close by. We're already past the halfway stage of this opening race of the weekend for Suzuki Swift. 20 minutes plus 1 lap for these lovely cars in a championship that sees a total of 6 different venues for 5 different countries, the Czech Republic being the only one with 2 events. Of course, this is the first one, and then we'll be flying to Brno in September after the summer break. But before that, round 4 will see us go to the lovely Slovakia ring in Orechova Poton for race number 4, well, run number 4, and races number 8, 9 and 10 from the 22nd to the 24th of August. Then of course it's Brno, as we said, and then the grand finale in Balaton Park with 3 other races. Of course, the peculiarity of this race format is that 3 events out of the 6 have 2 races scheduled, and the other 3 being rounds 2, 4 and 6 in Poznan, Slovakia ring and Balaton will have 3 races. So even more excitement coming from the racetrack, as now you see Mayor being glued to the back of Keller, moving to the outside as they start lap number 7, trying to get the move done over Vince Keller for the final spot on the overall podium, as well as the classifications reserved to the 1.4 turbocharged cars. We also have the Suzuki Swift 1.6 engine with no turbo, of course that being a slower version of the car, and so far the leader of that category is Benjamin Nagy in 7th position, with a comfortable 4.5 second gap over Zoltan Ksuti, with Andras Bilko in 3rd position. Of course, a starting grid dominated by Hungarians, as you see now a double lockup into turn 1, that being from Gabor Foray, who's fighting with Andras Bilko for that final spot on the 1.6 class podium. Bilko just in front with the blue car, and Gabor Foray in the white, orange and black Suzuki behind him. Speaking of the 1.6 category, we have of course a dedicated standings with Benjamin Nagy just in front with 97 points, Ksuti second with 88, and then it's Gabor Foray with 69 points. Andras Bilko 5th in the standings after the first 5 races. This is race number 6 of the season, of the 15 that we have in store for this year. In fact, the end of this weekend will mark the end of the first half of the season and start of the second part of the 2025 campaign for the Suzuki Swift Cup Europe drivers. Meanwhile, the gap between Jean-Bart Pinter and Istvan Bernula has grown to over 6 seconds, 6.6 now between the two Hungarians. Currently the only non-Hungarian driver on track is Boris Liziecki, the Pole, who's currently in 6th. Of course, Frischmann was the other one, as he races under the Austrian flag, but unfortunately for him, a technical issue to the car stranded him just meters after the start of the formation lap, meaning that he will be out of the running entirely from the first race. Naturally, we will be waiting for race number 2 to unfold, and for him to try and get a better result, as Bernula, Keller and Mayor are still in the same group, fighting for 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Esther Nemeth has lost a bit of ground now. She's more than a second off Mayor clearly, though at the end of the previous lap she was only 8/10 behind him. But the Hungarian has gained quite a lot of time, while Keller goes wide into turns 17 and 18, meaning that now Mayor has a chance into turn 20 to move into 3rd place, and he makes the move stick, as now Keller tries almost a desperate counter-attack into the penultimate corner, but that mistake could prove costly, as Mayor is finally through and into 3rd place. It was great anticipation from Mayor to move at the very last second towards the inside in order not to let Keller defend the position, which is now doing so perfectly towards turn number 1, as Nemeth out of nowhere now tries to go out of her way to try and get the place. Although, because Mayor has gone slightly wide into turn number 1, and therefore the switchback could promote Keller into 3rd once again, though he will be on the outside line for the first big braking zone of the 2nd sector, which is the hairpin of turn number 10. And here you can see Mayor trying his best to hang on, but at the end of the day, it's Keller who once again moves into 3rd. It's the 2nd time in this race that Mayor has made the move stick, and then Keller has taken it right back from him. Of course, this enabled Nemeth to be closer than ever to the two fighting for 3rd, and once again Istvan Bernula is flying into the distance for second position with only 3 minutes and 15 seconds on the clock. Of course, in front Pinter having a huge lead of over 7.5 seconds in the previous lap, and I'm guessing the lead is likely to go up to over 8 seconds now. And here you can see the 4 drivers fighting for that second position. More so 3 drivers fighting for third though, because Bernoula has pretty good advantage over the rest of the field. Fighting behind him, watch out now for Mayor, who gets it all wrong at the exit of turn number 20. And now he has to defend the position from Nemeth, who looks to the inside. Oh, Mayor brakes super late into turn number 1. As we see now Keller trying as hard as he can to defend his third place. Naturally, of course, it is not the way that Keller wanted this race to go. He was looking very promising in the fight for second, though Bernoula is now 1.5 seconds in front. It does not look like he could potentially lose the second position with only 1 minute 40 seconds on the clock. Mayor now looking to the inside on Keller. The latter though being super quick in the middle part of the circuit. Nemeth doing very good to hang to the back of these two and use their fighting to try and gain as much time as possible. Once again, a little wide goes Vince Keller, this time into turns 12 and 13. And in fact, there's a move up the inside from Mayor because of that slight mistake. And the two of them once again going at it as Mayor hangs it around the outside and makes it a brilliant pass over Vince Keller, who will not waste any time in trying to overtake his rival once more, as he now looks to the outside of turn number 20, maybe compromising his rival's run a bit through the last couple of corners. Meanwhile, Esther Nemeth is looking very dangerous as well. Into the final corner we go. There's an attack from Mayor as he is able to defend P3 for the time being, as we now enter lap number 13. Of course, fighting very hard at this moment in time, Mayor and Keller, the two trying as hard as they can, as unfortunately though we saw Benedek Mayor get turn 1 completely wrong, overshoot the braking zone and cutting across the gravel, effectively ending his chances at a podium finish. And he tried it so hard to keep that third place. It was the third time that he was able to go past Vince Keller, but one way or another he was not able to make it stick. Such a shame though for Benedek Mayor, who's still in 5th place, but unfortunately for him it does not look like a podium is on the cards for race number 1. It will have to wait for race number 2, which is scheduled to then take place on Sunday. Of course, day number 2 of proceedings, which will see the one-week championship of Suzuki once again hit the track for what is race number 2. This time, however, they will be doing so at 11:40 local time, right before lunchtime, for the second race of their weekend. But meanwhile, we have to concentrate on Pinter, who now goes across the line to start what is the final lap of the race. It's been a phenomenal showing so far from him, as of course he is looking to convert his pole position to a dominant race win here in Most. Naturally, such a phenomenal performance does not go unnoticed, especially on such a tricky circuit where we've seen countless times how hard it can be for the drivers to figure out the best way to go forward. As now Pinter is into the second sector of the race. His gap 11 seconds over Istvan Bernula. Such a dominant performance from him. Feels very surreal to see such a dominant drive in Suzuki Swift Cup, which is usually very, very hard fought, especially in these conditions. This time, however, no one could stop Zsombor Pinter on his way towards the win. The Hungarian is looking phenomenal. In the meantime, though, we also see behind them Istvan Bernula having secured basically second position, but all eyes are on Zsombor Pinter as the Hungarian is running out the final corner of the race to take victory here in Most. A phenomenal performance as the checkered flag now waves for Zsombor Pinter, who is a race winner here in Most in the opening race of the weekend. Great job from championship leader Istvan Bernula as well, as he now crosses the line in second position, whereas third place will go to Vince Keller, who was able to defend from the attacks of Esther Nemeth, and of course previously from the ones of Benedek Major, who could do nothing about his turn one mistake, ultimately finishing in fifth. Boris Liziecki crosses the line in sixth position. It was a good race for him as well. And for the second class, the 1.6 liter engine based Suzuki, it's Benjamin Nagy taking the win with 7th position overall. And here you can see the fight between Zoltan Ksuti, it's between Andras Bilko and Gabor Forrai, the latter trying everything in his power to make the move stick into what is 9th position in the overall standings. And in the end, once again, we see an overtaking in the last lap, and that is Andras Bielko making it stick over Gabor Forrai for third in the 1.6 class and 9th on the road. Gabor Forrai rounding out the top 10 as Daniel Nemish and Egon Burkus round out the top 12. Unfortunately, we saw earlier on the retirement for Austria's Frischmann, unfortunately out with a technical issue on his car. What a performance from Zsombor Pinter, able to cross the start-finish line in first place with a whopping 12-second lead over his main competitor, Istvan Bernula. 13.9 seconds was the ultimate gap. It was basically a second lap quicker than the rest of the entire field after 12 laps of racing. Third was Vince Keller for yet another podium, and Bernula will be very happy with it as his championship lead does nothing but to increase, especially following this opening race of the third round of the season in Most, Czech Republic. As you can see, the clouds very dark on the sky, but thankfully no rain. And that is the final standings, with Zsombor Pinter, Istvan Bernula and Vince Keller rounding off the top 3. Here is the rest of the standings. Of course, 12 drivers being able to make it to the end, and unfortunately the sole retirement for Frischmann of Austria, who wasn't able to start the race. And here are the highlights of race number 1 of Suzuki Swift Cup Europe from Most. Those were the highlights of Suzuki Swift Cup Europe for race number 1. Thank you for being with us, and see you later for even more action here from Autodrom Most.